you or a loved one to quit tobacco for good. My name is Dan. I work at the Utah County Health Department in the Tobacco Prevention and Control Program. And at any time during this presentation, if you have a question, feel free to let us know. And we definitely want to make sure we're addressing those questions, especially with the topic of tobacco cessation, quitting smoking, quitting vaping. It is such a broad topic. I want to make sure that we're making it relevant to you as the listeners and as the people that are attending this class. All right, so we're just going to jump right into it. So Way to Quit is a website. You just go to waytoquit.org. There's 4 sections on there that I'm going to talk about. The first is help, how to get help quitting. The second one is how to help someone quit. The third section is the dangers of tobacco. And the last section is vaping. So we'll just jump right into it. So the first section, get help quitting. So on Way to Quit, it goes over a number of different ways of how you can quit. The first option is to quit by phone. And I know there's a lot of text on here, but it's because there's just a lot of important information. So that's the phone number you can call, 1-800-QUIT-NOW. It is available 24/7. You do get up to 5 calls with a coach and up to 12 weeks of free nicotine replacement therapy, which are patches and gum or lozenge. I'll go over those a little bit more detailed later, but just so you're aware, you do get those for free. And the next option that you do have is you can quit by web if that's what you prefer. That's also available 24/7 as well. It gives you kind of a way to track your progress. You can kind of see how things are going in a user portal. You do get a little bit of more of a community feel where the phone is just one-on-one. You get this online community. And you also get up to 12 weeks of the free nicotine replacement therapy as well. So either one of these options are great. Again, that's just through Way to Quit. There's also a couple of other things that Way to Quit offers. You can customize your plan where you can choose from any of these options here. Which again, you can choose a free 2-week nicotine replacement therapy, which comes with the gum patches, lozenges, or you can also just choose educational material depending on what you would like. That's the nice thing about Way to Quit. It's about finding your way to quit, finding the thing that works, the method that works best for you. The last thing that I want to talk about is, and also we do have text messaging and email available as well, but the last thing is just the importance of talking to your doctor. There's kind of some interesting information about talking to your doctor. You're actually going to be 2 to 3 times more likely to quit with the help of a healthcare provider. So that's something just to keep in mind when you're trying to quit. A lot of people have tried to quit in the past, but they haven't necessarily tried to quit with the help of a healthcare provider. So doing that can double or triple your chances of being successful to quit. And you also can help other health issues to improve as well. That's the nice thing about quitting tobacco is it's not just a one thing. It'll help improve all areas of your life as well. And you'll be able to follow up with your healthcare provider. They'll be able to kind of work on you and follow up on that so you can get that continuity with the assistance that you need. The next thing I want to talk about is kind of a strategy, some strategies for dealing with cravings and things like that. So this is the first one. I know you guys can see it's a clock, but what does that represent? That represents delay. And typically, an urge to smoke only lasts 3 to 5 minutes. So that's something to keep in mind as well. So if you can make it past 3 to 5 minutes, you're very likely to be able to delay your tobacco usage, and you're likely to be able to overcome that trigger. The next one is going to be distract. So this is just a picture of someone just hiking. That's something fun that you can do. Keep busy, do something that you like. It'll help to keep your mind off of smoking or vaping or any other kind of tobacco as well. The next thing is to drink water. Drinking water is not only helpful to help you with distracting from tobacco use, but also great for your immune system and great for your health in general. The next thing is to take a deep breath. And interestingly enough, something about this, a lot of times people say that smoking is what relaxes them, but what really is relaxing them is actually taking the deep breath, right? So that's something that is important to remember. By taking that deep breath, you're getting relaxed. It's not from smoking that you're getting it, because when you do smoke, you do take a deep breath to get the cigarette smoke into your system, right? So by taking just a deep breath without smoking, you can relax, and that'll help you to overcome some of these cravings. Another thing as well is to just a little conversation bubble to just talk about it. Talking about it with a trusted family member or friend is super helpful and can really help you to get that support that you need. So those are the 5 Ds to remember: delay, drink water, distract, deep breaths. So if you can remember all those, whenever you do have a craving, that's going to be something that will be helpful to help you. And also if you know someone that's using tobacco, you can also help them that way as well. So the next thing I want to talk about is just kind of some quick tips. A lot of people have tried different things in the past, so these are kind of some of the more successful things that have worked. for a lot of people. So one is to just set a quit date, make a plan. Another one is to tell family and friends and coworkers about your plan and ask for support. Quitting is definitely not easy to do alone, but being able to get the support of a trusted family member or friend is really important. Again, talking to your doctor, you'll notice a lot of these things are pretty similar to the 5 Ds and even some other strategies discussed earlier. Another thing to do is to throw out all your tobacco-related products. If you don't have it, you can't use it, right? Something else to remember. And place sugar-free gum or hard candy in places that you use to keep tobacco. The thing that's useful about this is for a lot of people, they do have that hand-to-mouth motion. It's kind of a behavioral thing, a habit of using tobacco, and just having something in their mouth can be helpful. So even, or in your mouth if you're the one that's trying to quit, having sugar-free gum or some kind of hard candy, it can be helpful to have that instead of smoking or using other kinds of tobacco. And exercising and getting outside is also really, really important, especially when the weather's nice. You can go outside and go walking or do something fun outside. That'll help to kind of keep your mind off of things. And the next thing that's also helpful to do is to just brush your teeth often so you get that kind of clean feel. Do you brush your teeth? Get rid of the smell of tobacco in your home and your car. Just because a lot of times if you smell the tobacco, it can kind of be almost like a trigger, but getting your car detailed or cleaning your home, deep cleaning it, can motivate you to avoid that, getting that smell in there again, right? And getting a new sense of environment where you're at. And the last one is just to avoid places and people that involve smoking. That's something that's really important. If you frequently go to certain locations, try to avoid going to those locations, and then you'll be able to be more successful in your quit attempts. And taking a deep breaths. Again, I talked about cravings earlier, but just remember the importance of deep breathing. So the next thing I want to talk about is just kind of a little bit more specifically about triggers, right? So some of these kind of relate to the other things. Everything builds off of each other, but these are 3 kind of common types of triggers. The first one I want to talk about is social triggers, and if you can know what triggers you to use tobacco and really understand that, you're going to be a lot more successful with your quit attempts. So being able to know that you know what your triggers are is going to be super helpful. The first one to think about is social triggers. So think about people and places, how they can be triggers. Being around certain people or going to a particular bar can be a strong trigger. Other social triggers could be seeing someone else smoke or going to events where people smoke. So just kind of think about that and just really be aware of it. And the best way to handle all of that is to just avoid that. Ask friends and family not to smoke around you and to rely on the support that you can get, right? And to try to avoid those locations. Another thing that's important to remember is with emotions. A lot of times tobacco is used as a way to cope with stress. It's used as a way to cope with loneliness, with boredom. It's used as a way to cope with other negative emotions. Although it is difficult, you can try to find other ways to deal with these emotions. Don't let a tough moment cause you to go back to using tobacco, right? You can kind of think of something else to do. Some examples are maybe talking to a friend, doing some exercise, and again, practicing those 5 Ds that we talked about earlier. Last thing is, and this is kind of an interesting thing, and if, for those of you that use tobacco, you might be able to relate to this, but a lot of times it's those routines, those patterns. I know there's a lot of people that I've talked to, the first thing they do in the morning after they get their coffee is they start to smoke their first cigarette, right? So it's being able to modify that routine. So even just changing the coffee to maybe trying to drink tea instead, or brushing your teeth right after a meal, or doing something different that you haven't done before, right? Because addiction is a behavior-based thing. So as long as you're able to do that, as long as you're able to change up your routine, you're going to be successful. Even as funny as this may sound, taking a different route to get to work. If you usually smoke in the car, or if you usually smoke first thing when you get somewhere, taking a different route's going to throw your brain through a loop because you're going to be doing something different. So the next thing that I want to talk about is just managing withdrawal. That's something really important. Quitting tobacco is tough. It's difficult to quit tobacco. It's something to recognize that it is difficult. Your body needs to get used to not having nicotine, which nicotine is one of the most addictive substances on the planet. So it is really hard. So don't feel bad if you've tried and maybe had a relapse or withdrawal. It takes the average smoker about 7 to 11 times, or around 8 quit attempts before they're able to quit for good. And those are serious quit attempts when they actually try to quit, like by doing something, either going cold turkey or doing something else. So if the first time you didn't succeed, try again. Try using Way to Quit as a strategy to quit for next time. It's really important to use tools and support that we can offer you. And again, all these services are free. They're available to you, and they're very successful. There's been a lot of people that have had success with it. The next thing I want to talk about is nicotine replacement therapy. A lot of these you might be familiar with. There are some that are available without a prescription. The reason why nicotine replacement therapy is important is because of when you're talking about addiction, there's kind of two ways that you look at it, right? You have the physiological component, which is the science of your brain, how that works, and then you also have the behavioral aspect. So I kind of talked about that earlier, kind of changing your habits, doing things differently. But on top of doing things differently, medication can also be helpful. So there's a couple different ones that are available without a prescription. One is the nicotine lozenge. Some people like that because it's still, you get that hand-to-mouth motion, and that's something that they really enjoy. Another thing is the nicotine gum, and then another one is nicotine patches. So if one of these doesn't work for you, you don't like it, you can try another option. All these are great options for really getting you the nicotine, because if you're getting nicotine from these nicotine replacement therapies, you're not going to be getting nicotine from the cigarettes, and along with the nicotine that cigarettes contain, there's tons of different chemicals. There's also some that you do need a prescription to get. These other ones are from over the counter. You can even get a nicotine inhaler. Some people really like that one just because you do have that hand-to-mouth motion, right? And you do actually have something inside of your mouth. So a lot of people do enjoy that as well. And then there's also nasal spray. There's a couple different options, kind of a similar thing with that. And then the last thing there's two medications that are actually not nicotine based. For some people these work better, for others not. That's just the Chantix or the varenicline and the Zyban or bupropion. And the way these work essentially is they kind of block the nicotine receptors in your brain, so that way you won't find nicotine as pleasurable to use. So you're not going to want to be smoking or using tobacco because it won't give you the same feeling as it used to before, right? Because the receptors in your brain are not going to be as open. So just remember, in those bottom ones, you do need to talk with your healthcare provider to get a prescription, and especially make sure to talk with them because some of those do include different side effects. So what works best for one person may not work best for someone else. So that's why we call it way to quit. So you have a lot of different options to try. So the next thing, just talking about within the first 24 to 48 hours is when withdrawal symptoms are actually the strongest. And so just being aware of what those symptoms are and knowing that that is normal can help you to understand what's going on. It might be uncomfortable, but they won't last forever. If you do have a hard time with withdrawal symptoms, we do encourage you to call the QUIT line. Again, that's 1-800-QUIT-NOW, or contact your doctor. And always, if you do feel like it's a medical emergency, definitely contact 911 if it is an emergency. But some common withdrawal symptoms include headaches, cravings, depressed mood, insomnia, irritability, frustration, anger, anxiety, difficulty concentrating, restlessness, decreased heart rate, or also increased appetite or weight gain. So just kind of be on the lookout. That is normal, especially within the first 24 to 48 hours. So the next section is how to help someone quit. So if you've ever been curious about what the best way to help someone quit is, then this section is for you. And there's a lot of useful information here. Hopefully some new things that you'll be able to put in practice with your loved ones and with your friends and family. So the first thing that I want to talk about is don't nag or lecture. I know it's easy to get on someone's case and be like, don't do this, don't smoke. But nagging or lecturing doesn't help and can actually put you on the bad side of your family or of your family member or friend. Best thing to do is just kind of be there as a support. Another thing that you want to do is you want to reward those milestones. Even if it's just if they made it 24 hours without smoking a cigarette, that's a big deal because a lot of people, they end up smoking a pack a day. If they can go one day without smoking, they should be recognized for that. And you can recognize them with a card, a treat, or an outing, going to a special location or something like that. Another thing that's important is to respect space. Quitting is hard, and don't take their bad mood personally. You do need to be there for them, but also recognize that they don't need you checking in all the time. Right? They know that you're there to help them. That's the most important thing. But quitting is their decision. You can't quit smoking for someone else. You can help them to quit smoking, but they do need to be the ones that make the decision. Another important thing is to acknowledge that slip-ups will happen. Don't be too hard on your quitter. Make sure to help them identify what caused the slip-up, and that way they can prevent it from happening again based off of how you're able to help them. And the last tip is distractions. Kind of similar to the 5D, but it really does make a big difference to do something fun and to kind of help them get their minds off of using tobacco, especially if you take them to a location where they won't be able to use tobacco because it's a tobacco-free event. Or take them to the movie theater or something like that where they don't have that option to use tobacco. So that's something that can be super helpful for them. So these are kind of some of the things that you should be doing. These are the do's. The first one is to remember that the quitter is in charge. The quitting has to be their decision. Also, do let them know that you're there for them. Be an encouraging, positive voice. Do things that will keep their mind off of smoking. Again, going for a walk, go to a movie, playing a game. And do help the quitter with things that can make them stressed. Cleaning and cooking and childcare are some of the most stressful things out there. So if you can help them with those, that can be really helpful, because a lot of times when they're stressed, that's when they go to use tobacco. And do celebrate along the way. Again, that's really important, to celebrate with them so that they know that they are progressing, and so that they know that what they're doing is important to you. So here's a couple things that we call the don'ts, things that you shouldn't be doing. Don't judge, scold, or nag the quitter. This can make them feel bad about themselves. And a lot of times they know it's bad. A lot of times they know about health effects. They've heard about it. But yet, because it's so addictive, they continue to do it. So it doesn't help if you're there just hammering on them. That's going to make them more likely to continue to use. Don't offer advice. Just ask them how you can help. I'm sure a lot of them have heard advice from everywhere, but just saying, how can I help you? What would you like me to be doing? And don't take it personally if they're grumpy with you, especially right after they've been trying to quit, because nicotine withdrawal does affect their mood. And don't be critical if they slip. It does take several tries. Just think of it as their loved one or your friend learning to quit, right? It's kind of like they're not failing, they're just learning what doesn't work so they can try something else the next time. So just keep that in mind when you're helping someone to quit. The next thing, the way to talk about quitting, there's kind of 3 different strategies to talk about quitting with your loved one, the person that you're trying to help quit. The first one is to listen for cues and respond positively if they ask questions, or if they bring up quitting, the doctor, or pregnancy, or any kind of life change, or if kids start asking about tobacco. Create an opening. You can start a conversation. Just ask if they've thought about quitting. You kind of want to ease into it. Just say, I heard this thing on the radio about quitting tobacco. What do you think about that? Just kind of something non-judgmental, just kind of something really just a friendly approach. Or even just saying, did you see that sign that says there's no smoking in this location? What do you think about that? Just to kind of bring the topic up in a way that's not coming across judgmental. The other important thing to do, as you can see right there, is to ask questions. Ask questions that don't have yes or no answers. If you just ask yes or no, it's going to be a very short conversation. But if you ask an open-ended question, that'll help you to identify and know best how to support them. Like, what is it that stresses you out? Or how long have they smoked? When did how they started? What their cravings and triggers are, and reasons that they might want to quit. If you can find a reason that they want to quit, you can help them to make that reason more important than the reasons why they smoke. So those are kind of some things to keep in mind as well. Those different strategies that you can see. Just kind of try to make it natural, and then very important also is just listening to them, responding positively to them. So there's a couple different types of supporter when quitting tobacco, and a great thing about Way to Quit, if you go to waytoquit.org, there's actually kind of a personality quiz to find out what kind of supporter you are, the way that you're supporting your tobacco user. And so there's 4 main types on there. The first one is a planner. So if you're a planner, this is the way that you help your quitter. And someone that's quitting might need all 4 of these supports at different times of their experience. But quitting does require planning, and you're the person that can help a quitter to pick a date, plan for cravings, also to help them research effective tools, and help them to get ready for their quit and be there along the way. A plan helps them a lot more. And then the next type is a cheerleader. And so a cheerleader is just someone that's there cheering for them, like, you made it 2 days without smoking, that's awesome, let's do something fun. And keep them going, help them motivated, and most importantly, help them to feel loved. The next type of supporter is therapy, or a therapist supporter. Quitting is stressful both emotionally, physically, and in all other aspects. So you're the person that your quitter can talk to about their feelings. You're the one that can help them to process the change and remind them to just take deep breaths and just kind of take things one day at a time. So sometimes remember that this habit is like a friend, and they need your love as they say goodbye. So it's something that a lot of times they've been using tobacco for such a long time, it's a part of their life. So it's literally like letting go of something that's been with them for a long time, especially if they've been addicted since they were younger. So just remember that they do need kind of some therapy as well. And the last type of supporter is a coach. So what do coaches usually do? Coaches, they help you to set goals, they motivate you, and sometimes they tell you the things exactly how you need to hear them, right? as much as we maybe don't want to hear that. Sometimes we do. The coaches are straight up with us. Quitting can be like training. It takes time, practice, and as well. So a coach is someone that can motivate the quitter to keep going. So you can be that coach. You can't make them quit, but you can encourage them. You can help them get the tools that they need and motivate them to keep trying. So again, just kind of think about what kind of a supporter you are, and just know that through different times of the quit process, you might need to take on one of these 4 different roles to be able to help your quitter successfully quit. The next thing to remember is that you understand cravings and triggers, because the smoker, the tobacco user, they're going to understand it from their point of view, but understand it from your point of view, so you can know best how to help them. Helping loved ones stay tobacco-free include changes in your life as well. That's something that you have to remember. Cravings are completely normal, and with your help, they're more likely to overcome them and quit successfully. One thing that is really important to remember is a high five is much more successful than finger pointing, right? Like if you're able to give them that support. Help them to avoid triggers, and you'll also help them to stay quit. This can mean spending time with different friends, not going to your usual hangouts, or changing where you drink your morning coffee. It'll be an adjustment for both of you, but your support can make all the difference. So just kind of remember that. Last thing is to just help overcome relapse. Don't get discouraged. It does take multiple attempts for someone to quit tobacco. Consider it like learning to quit. Help them identify their triggers and help them make a plan for their next attempt. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the dangers of tobacco. I won't go into too much details on this because there's so many different issues with tobacco use, but just to kind of give you some of the resources. Way to Quit does go over the health effects of tobacco and talks about the danger, just so that you're aware, as well as if you're helping someone to quit, so that you're all aware of what those are. So here you can kind of see there's a lot of different effects that tobacco can bring upon, either directly or indirectly, or can have an effect on. One of the biggest things is just your risk for stroke and heart disease goes up 2 to 4 times. Smoking kills 50% of those that don't quit, and each cigarette contains 7,000 chemicals, 70 of which are linked to cancer. So just kind of something to keep in mind. But again, I don't want to dwell too much on this. But one thing I do want to show is Way to Quit actually has this calculator. And so I'd encourage you after this class to go to waytoquit.org and find this cost of tobacco calculator. You'll find it under the dangers of tobacco section. But essentially what you can do is you can plug in how much you pay for a pack of cigarettes. Depending on brand, on average, you could get it for probably about $7. And there's 20 cigarettes in a pack. So if you smoke a pack a day, if you started when you're 21 and you're currently 45, this is going to show you how much you've already spent. So you've already spent $61,320 on tobacco, right? Just think about what you could do with $61,000. And that's something you could buy a car with that, make a nice down payment for a house, and just kind of think about that. And what would you do if you had an extra $2,500 every year? So that's one thing to think about when you quit smoking or quit using tobacco. You do have a lot of these financial benefits, and that's something that's important to think about. A lot of times we don't realize how much this habit costs, but it is really expensive. And so being able to quit tobacco is really a great thing. So just check that feature out on the waytoquit.org, cost of tobacco. So I'll just talk a little bit about one of the dangers of tobacco use is the addictiveness of it, especially with younger users. Because a teen's brain is still developing, still kind of hardwiring the brain. The brain is wired for addiction. If you start using tobacco while you're younger, it's going to be more difficult to quit because the brain hasn't finished fully developing. And so that goes for any kind of tobacco. And even though we've started to see declines in youth use of cigarettes, cigars, and other tobacco, we've started to see an increase of vaping, which I'll talk about in a minute. That's something just to think about, because not only are they risking the effects of chemicals that they're taking in, but also the effect of addiction itself on brain development, which can affect concentration, and there's a lot of long-term effects that we still don't know about as well. That's something to think about on that. With that, so yeah, it is also using nicotine is going to make youth more likely to use other addictive substances, as well as give them lower impulse control, greater inability to focus, and can also increase depression and anxiety. So just briefly, I'll talk about the kinds of tobacco. A lot of us are familiar with cigarettes, so I won't go too much into that. I talked about which chemicals they have. Another form of tobacco is smokeless tobacco, so you can kind of see that in the corner, that chewing tobacco. So smokeless tobacco includes chewing tobacco as well as snuff and snus. Chewing tobacco comes in the form of a loose leaf. and then it's again just placed in the mouth or also inhaled through the nose. Another form of tobacco is hookah, so that's kind of that fancy little pipe over there that you can see. Hookahs are water pipes, and those are used to smoke especially made flavors and things like that. And then also e-cigarettes, which is also vaping is another name for that, which is a lot of youth's tobacco of choice that they use. And if something that's scary about that is the numbers have increased since we started collecting data on youth e-cigarette use, specifically in Utah. Approximately 10.5% of high school students report using e-cigarettes, which is 5 times more than in 2011. So that's something that we're really concerned about, something that we're working on to decrease use. And then there's also cigars as well, which is a roll of tobacco wrapped in a leaf tobacco, unlike cigarettes, which are wrapped up in paper. So those are some of the 4 different types of tobacco. Here's some benefits of quitting. Again, I want to focus more on this rather than some of the health effects, just so a lot of things that we might not have been aware of. But even within 20 minutes of quitting, your heart rate drops. So that's something to think about. You're already seeing the benefits right away. Within 12 hours, carbon monoxide levels in your blood are going to drop back to normal. And within 2 weeks to 3 months, your heart attack risk begins to drop. Your lung function begins to improve. Within 1 to 9 months, your coughing and shortness of breath decrease. Within a year, your added risk of coronary heart disease is half that of the smokers. Within 5 to 15 years, your stroke risk is reduced to that of a non-smoker. And then within 10 years, your lung cancer death rate is about half that of the smokers. And other types of cancer, your risk decreases as well. Same thing within 15 years. 15 years after quitting, your lung cancer death rate is half that of the smokers. So that's something to think about as well. Just kind of some of the different the different benefits of quitting. So try to focus on that. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about vaping as well, specifically because that's something that is kind of increased. So what exactly is vaping? The definition of vaping is inhaling vapor created by an electronic cigarette device such as an e-cigarette or vape pen. They contain e-liquids, nicotine flavorings, and other chemicals. These liquids are often flavored, featuring hundreds of bold flavors and flashy packaging that are often designed to appeal to teens, making them seem more like candy than addictive substances. But in reality, 99% of e-cigarettes contain nicotine, which makes them highly addictive, no matter how it's packaged. And a question that we get a lot of times is, does vaping help you to quit smoking? So the short answer is no. The reason for that is when it comes to quitting tobacco, what they've recommended is that the CDC and Surgeon General have said that it's not effective because they're not designed to help people quit smoking. And the reason for that is because they also contain high amounts of nicotine. So even if you end up switching from regular cigarettes to vape, you're still going to be getting nicotine. You're still going to be getting that addictive substances. And a lot of times people actually end up dual using, which is a bigger problem. They end up smoking and using electronic cigarettes, so it's kind of double the problem. So they're not designed to help people quit smoking. There's better ways to quit, like I talked about earlier, using like nicotine replacement therapy, or using some tools and help that you can get from waytoquit.org. So there are some health effects that can happen because of vaping. A lot of those are just the effect on the developing brain, and a lot of them are some of the things that we just don't know yet. We don't know the long-term effects of vaping. With smoking, ever since the report from the Surgeon General in the early 1960s, we've known that smoking is harmful and is bad for health. But with vaping, it hasn't been around as long, so we don't know the long-term effects of that. But we do know that teenagers aren't done growing, and neither are their brains. So that's why I just have this graphic over here. You can't buy a new brain. That's not something that you can replace. So it's something that you need to make sure that you're taking care of. And nicotine exposure at a young age causes damage and is a pathway for addiction to tobacco as well as other products. So again, we don't know all the long-term effects, so just keep that in mind with that. These are some of the different vaping devices that exist. So there's e-cigarettes, which you can kind of see. All these could be considered examples of e-cigarettes, but the first e-cigarettes look very similar to regular cigarettes. The next thing is vape pens, which are kind of those on the far left side of the screen. So those kind of look like a pen. And then Juul, which looks sort of like a flash drive, kind of some of those ones on the right side, and is very easy to conceal, which is something that we're also concerned about with youth use, is these fancy electronic or vapes or jewels that the youth are able to use. Very simple, very easily. And another thing is e-hookahs, which is kind of same thing similar to the hookah I showed earlier, but it's an electronic version of that. So it's a kind of vaping vapor, and as opposed to using like combustible tobacco or things like that. Hookah pens, pretty much the same thing as well, just kind of a pen with a longer coil on it. And mods, which are those really big ones that you see in the very middle. That's a mod, and the thing about mods is they can be customizable, where you can put in different juices, nicotine juices, you can change them up. So that's why it's really concerning, because it's really easy to get a lot more nicotine that way than a traditional pack of cigarettes. So some of the safety concerns that we have, a lot of times we get people that say, I've heard that vaping only contains, they think it's only water vapor that's coming out, but in reality it's not. So what you can see here is there's a lot of different things. It's not anything close to water vapor. It contains flavoring, such as diacetyl, which is a chemical linked to serious lung disease, to popcorn lung. You can also see there's cancer-causing chemicals, there's ultrafine particles, nicotine, as well as volatile organic compounds. A great way to kind of get an understanding of what's actually coming out is when you spray a water bottle or water spray on your hand, it's easy to dry off and wipe. But if you spray your hand with like a hairspray or a spray-on deodorant, there's like sticky substance on it afterwards. So that's kind of to give you an idea. It's an aerosol rather than just water vapor. So that's something that we are really concerned about, because it is something that a lot of people don't understand. They don't understand that what they're actually doing is bringing in a lot of different chemicals, not just water vapor. So it definitely is a lot more than that. And so the last thing, just kind of as we wrap things up, with vaping, it's not good for your health. It's addictive, full of toxic chemicals. They do contain nicotine just like traditional cigarettes, and it's not a proven method for quitting smoking. There are other safer alternatives for quitting smoking that are better choices. Quitting is good for your body, great for your lungs. Don't expose yourself to potentially hazardous chemicals and substances. We know it's hard to quit, so don't give up even if you tried and failed in the past. You can do it and we can help. And another thing I will say with vaping and youth, there is another website that's called See Through the Vape, and it's a great resource that you can find actually from the website waytoquit.org, where you can go and you can find even ways to, not only if you do have a child or know someone that's vaping, but you can also find ways to talk to your children about vaping and e-cigarettes to prevent them from using. So that is the conclusion of what I had as far as the presentation goes. Do we have any questions or anything else that anyone would like to be addressed? All right, perfect. Well, thank you so much for attending, and those that you will be seeing this virtually after the class, feel free to, I'll just give you guys my phone number if you do want to call if you have more questions. You can reach me at 801-851-7082.
Your name.
All right, thank you so much.
And what's your name?
Oh, my name is Dan, sorry. Yeah, I think I said that at the beginning, but for those of you that jumped in on the middle, yeah, my name's Dan.